after 22 years in education, leaving education and stepping into a COO role in the private sector, I was shocked about what I saw in the private sector with students. I saw that we were preparing kids to go to Harvard, to go to Yale, to go to a technical school, but we were not preparing them for the workforce. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you why that is and what you can do about it. Hi, and welcome to Just Beyond the Classroom. I'm Jennifer. I'm a former classroom teacher, a former principal, and now I'm the COO at a construction company. Let me tell you that I remember the moment everything clicked and changed for me. Okay, I had spent years inside school buildings working with teachers, with students, as a district curriculum, multilingual support, with students, with teachers, with parents. I did walkthroughs. I evaluated curriculum. I knew how schools worked. And I thought that we were doing all the right things, especially when I was a former high school assistant principal. But when I moved into the private sector, within the first couple of weeks, I started noticing something that just blew my mind. The young people that we were hiring, they were smart, right? They had degrees, they had 4.0 GPAs, they had certifications, they had fantastic internships. And some of them had even already had hands-on experience working in the construction industry. But once they got into the office, they didn't know how to work. And I'm not trying to be harsh when I say that, but I mean it literally. They don't know how to hold a conversation with a supervisor. They don't know how to disagree with somebody appropriately. They don't know how to manage conflict, and they do not know how to accept feedback. They definitely didn't know how to dress in a professional environment, and they didn't know how to carry themselves. I come back to our first example of the first team member that I hired. When I started at this company, we needed to streamline our HR hiring procedures. And, over the last 12 years, I've hired dozens and dozens of teachers. So I had a really good protocol that I could use to really set up that framework. And so we hired this guy. He did pretty good on the interview, but once he got into the office, it was a total disaster. First of all, he fell asleep at his desk. He fell asleep at meetings. Even though, I checked on him because I'm a former, educator. I'm like, hey, are you okay? You okay? I try to work with him, but he still fell asleep at his desk, fell asleep in meetings. He would tap on the desk. He would make noises and drive the rest of his coworkers in their stations crazy. And then worst of all, his driver's license got suspended and he didn't say anything. We only found out because he got into a wreck and totaled his car. So he was driving to the office and to job sites without a license. That's major. That's a big deal. That's a red flag. That's dishonesty. We finally did have to let him go, but one thing that I was thinking was, who prepared him for this job, right? He's 26, 27 years old and he doesn't know how to behave in an office. Did he act like this in the classroom and the teachers just didn't say anything because he was compliant? I really believe he didn't know how to behave. And you know what? It cost him a really great job. And at the end, I don't think it was really him. It was a preparation problem. It was a failure by our schools, and it was a failure by his parents, right? Not training him and preparing him for the workforce. Now let's talk about what workforce readiness really means. And I want to tell you that most people get this wrong. They think career fairs, job shadowing, resumes, and workshops. And those are all very important. They also need different kind of workforce readiness that is not just career exploration. Those things are very surface level, right? What we need is 3 specific things. The first is communication across different settings. We're so good nowadays in classroom to have a student turn and talk. Hey, turn and talk about the time that you went to the park. Why was it good? Why was it fun? Turn and talk about this and that, which is great. Students learn through talking. But in that turn and talk, are they disagreeing? Are they coming into consensus? Are they arguing points? They're not learning the skills they need to be ready in the workforce. They're just doing fun prompts for learning. That is the number one thing that needs to be fixed. How we communicate and how we teach students to communicate. The second one is self-regulation under pressure. A lot of our kids shut down under pressure, right? A lot of it has to do with accepting no for an answer. But what about that high school student who cracks when their paper is due? Or when their project, they procrastinated and they're doing the project the night before and they can't handle it. So the parent has to do the project for them, right? They break down. They can't self-regulate. And we know that being in the workforce, we always have deadlines. We always have last minute projects. We always have something going on that's going to be high stress. We have to be able to remain calm. Just this week, I got 2 days notice to move a forklift, a boom truck, and a container off a job site that we've had for 3 years. And I had 2 days to do it. And guess what? Those things aren't towed by regular tow trucks. So I had to go into action. Was it stressful? Absolutely, because I had to do that while I was doing the rest of my work. I was supporting our team who needed to get that done, but I had to self-regulate. I couldn't break down. I couldn't just quit. I couldn't just have a meltdown at work. I had to keep it together, move forward, and get it done. And our students don't have that resilience and they don't have that self-regulation. Now, the third one is personal accountability. And here, this is where I'm going to be really specific because people get this wrong. People think that compliance is the same as accountability. No, compliance is just doing what you were told to do. Workforce readiness is really accepting ownership, right? You follow through because you said that you would. You own your mistakes instead of deflecting them. You don't need anyone over your shoulder to do your work and to do it well. That's personal accountability. And the workforce sees the difference immediately when those three things are in place and when those three things are not. Now, let me tell you what I did as an administrator at a middle school. We had just merged 2 failing Title I schools, right? So that's first of all, the most brilliant idea, right? Let's fail 2 schools, 2 failing schools. We merged those 2 schools and we knew that the school was going to need stronger support than typical behavior systems. So we implemented something called the 12 effective behaviors, which is embedded into the ACT work keys. And what we did is we aligned it to PBIS and we created a system where students work towards points based on their behavior. And they worked on adult privileges, not just stickers. The first couple of months, we tried to do the traditional reward system with the little cards and the little tchotchkes. And you know what? That didn't really work because in middle school, no one really cares that much about a pencil, right? They're writing in pen anyway. But when we started saying, you know what do kids want? Kids want freedom. Kids want autonomy and kids want choice. So we really sat down and looked at our rewards and what we were doing. So we created a level system in which when you demonstrated any of these workforce readiness behaviors that week, you got evaluated and got points. And depending on the level system, then you would get certain privileges. For example, the masters would get all kinds of privileges, right? They get to leave class early and walk to the cafeteria by themselves. They would be first in line to get food. They got to sit outside in the courtyard unsupervised and eat lunch. They got passes to everything, every event we had, whether a basketball game, dance, field trip, they all got it free. They got free time instead of recess. We called it social time. They got all kinds of rewards. And then we tiered the system accordingly. And the kids who couldn't handle that, then they were in a classroom doing a reteach experience, right? But the most powerful thing that we had to do before we did those things was we had to expect this behavior from our teachers. And in order for us to expect this from our teachers, we had to teach it to our teachers, right? So we created PLCs and monthly professional developments where we practice the behavior. Another thing that we did that I think is really important that administrators sometimes forget is we created lesson plans for these behaviors for our teachers. They already have to plan for content, and now to add an extra layer for them to plan for the behavior, it's a lot. So we focused on a behavior for like a month. Sometimes if the behavior was easier, then we would just do it for 2 weeks. It just would depend, but we would teach it to the teachers. We would give them the lesson plans. We would model it. And then we would then expect that same behavior from the teachers. So if we were working on accepting feedback appropriately, well, guess what? When I did that walkthrough and we met to review that walkthrough, I'm expecting the teacher to accept feedback appropriately. And it didn't always happen, right? So it was just such a great opportunity for learning. And this really started turning everything around. We really focused in 7th grade, and then we moved it down to 6th grade. So then by the time 7th grade went up to 8th and 6th went up to 7th, we already had established some culture and some norms for that entering 6th grade class, right? It was the standard. It was the way that our students talked, our way our students behaved, and the way our teachers modeled respect and also prepared them for the workforce. So let's talk why this matters now, because here's what I need you to understand at the moment that we're in. The workforce has changed, and now with AI, it's going to be even more. Because AI can do so many simple tasks, what's going to keep students employed is their communication, their ability to self-regulate, and you guessed it, their professionalism, right? And employers have not been quiet about this. They're definitely telling everybody that our students are not ready. You could see the workforce data from the Department of Labor. You can see the Indeed data from just Indeed and different job forums. The turnover rate is outrageous. But you know what? You know who also is saying something? Is our colleges. If you look at the rate of how many freshmen go in not ready to succeed their first year in college, not just academically, but they don't have the social skills to survive, to self-regulate, to make sure that they get to class on time, to make sure that their papers are turned in. They call their parents and ask their parents to call their professor. It's ridiculous. You're 18 years old. You should be able to advocate for yourself, right? And so what are we going to do about this, right? The schools that ignore this and just keep sending students into an environment that they struggle because they can read and write a paper are going to be the ones that students are not going to be successful. Okay. But the schools that really get ahead of this and the principals and the curriculum directors who are willing to say, you know what, we're going to partner with parents and we're responsible for this. We're not just responsible for test scores, because at the end, school is supposed to produce a citizen, right? A person who can read, think for themselves, and make good decisions, right? And those schools are going to be the ones that have graduates that employers are going to call back. Those are the kids who are going to be promoted. Those are the kids who are going to build careers. And those are the kids who are going to become CEOs and COOs of future companies. Now, what's the difference? The difference starts with the decision to care about what happens with two students after graduation, not just before it. So whether you're a kindergarten teacher or you're a high school principal or you're a district person, this question is for you. Do we care enough about students? Do we care what happens to our students after they leave our classroom? No, if you're convinced that you're going to be the difference for each student that you come in contact with, let me help you out. I've come up with a great workforce blueprint that is going to take you step by step what you need to do to implement things like this. It's called the Workforce Readiness Blueprint. It's based on the 12 effective behaviors, which are research-based, and they're supported by almost every single state's work keys. They're aligned to standards. They are ready to use. And our program has lesson plans ready to go, and teacher presentation slide, as well as a video explainer so you can study it with your teachers. You can understand how to teach the behavior and have strategies built in. If this is something that you think would work for you, if this hits something for you, the link